Associate Professor and field archaeologist Sonia Harmand and her team made an astounding discovery in 2011 when they unearthed primitive stone tools near the western shore of Lake Turkana, Kenya, dating back over 3.3 million years. It is postulated that our distant ancestors would use these sharpened rocks to strike the bones of animal carcasses to access the nutrient-rich marrow. Although our closest living relatives, chimpanzees, exhibit similar behaviour, the refinement and permanent modification of our environment spanning hundreds of millennia is uniquely human. This ancient engineering on an ecological scale may have also played a pivotal role in developing our brains, as access to greater nutrition through less energy-intensive means could have resulted in a permanent resource shift. More energy is diverted to operating our larger brains. Larger brains have greater cognitive capacity to engineer more effective tools. Enhanced tools acquire nutrition faster, supporting larger brains. This cycle continues until the human species encounters another step change, the harnessing of fire. Approximately 1.5 million years ago, before the formation of Lake Turkana, a ferocious lightning storm strikes the open savanna, igniting patches of grassland. The storm subsides, but the flames endure long enough for our ancestor, Homo Erectus, to grasp a burning branch. She uses the branch to set alight an assortment of scavenged grass strands, twigs and other dried branches, creating the first intentional fire. Over the next 1.1 million years, early humans may have used intentional fires to cook raw food, unlocking nutrients whilst expending less energy on digestion. This could have accelerated the growth of our brains, similar to the impact of stone tools discussed previously. It wasn't until 400,000 years ago that we found regular instances of artificial fires, possibly started without nature's intervention. With artificial fires almost eliminating harmful bacteria and pre-digesting food, they also provided a source of warmth and a sense of closeness for a band of early humans, perhaps sparking early conversation. The human population begins to migrate out of Africa around 100,000 years ago. However, it is estimated to remain under 1 million until the next step change occurs, the advent of agriculture. Approximately 12,000 years ago, the human species, now having settled almost all continents, transitions from a nomadic lifestyle consisting of hunting, gathering and fishing to domesticating local flora and fauna. Although according to fossil records, agriculturalists were subject to arduous work, nutritionally poor diets and less liberty than nomads, a more prevalent and predictable food source resulted in specialization. For the first time in humankind's history, individuals could now dedicate more time to honing a specific craft, such as advancing agricultural tools. This enabled resource production to scale, sustaining an exponentially growing population surpassing 170 million people as of 2,000 years ago. As empires and dynasties rose and fell, trade corridors between nations were established, and religious ideologies proliferated throughout civilization, it took just 1,100 years for the population to double to 340 million in 1150 AD. The bubonic plague ravaged much of the globe in the early 1300s, killing an estimated 75 to 200 million people globally, and an estimated 25 million in Europe alone. But even this could not permanently derail humanity's growth, doubling again to 680 million just 4 centuries later in the early 1700s. So far in this video, we have defined progress by 2 pillars: technological innovation and population growth. It is now time to introduce a third: gross domestic product, or GDP. GDP is typically calculated by adding up what you and I make and what we consume, individual and business investments, government spending, and net imports and exports. As humanity experiences the next step change, the Industrial Revolution commencing in 1760, the steam engine, widespread extraction of coal, and organisation of human labour had the same flywheel effect primitive stone tools and fire had on the brain, but on civilization itself. An abundance of coal resulted in machines that could extract coal more efficiently, leading to the production of more machines demanding even more coal, ushering in a golden age of technological innovation, echoing Jevons paradox. By 1900, the population had reached 1.6 billion, and the global GDP was in excess of $4.8 trillion. Humanity had been subject to myriad step changes, including the telegraph, the harnessing of alternating current, steam-powered liners traversing the world's oceans, and soon, heavier-than-air flight. Although we could group these and succeeding innovations into one step change, I believe they deserve their own, as it illustrates the increased frequency with which step changes are encountered. Over the next 126 years, bringing us to the time of writing, profound contributions such as the computational revolution during World War II, the space race of the 60s, personal computers in the 70s, the internet in the 80s and 90s, and smartphones in the 2000s have brought about immense technological abundance, leading to a population nearing 8.3 billion and a global GDP of $123.6 trillion. Since the 1920s, our population has increased 4.3 times and is expected to plateau at 10.2 billion by the end of this century. Therefore, we will assume 10.2 billion is sustained. However, global GDP has increased 18.4 times over the same period. The most recent step change, often proclaimed by the media as the Fourth Industrial Revolution, began on the 30th of November 2022 with the release of ChatGPT 3.5. Over the past 3 years and 4 months, a great war has been waged between frontier AI laboratories, including Google DeepMind, Anthropic, OpenAI, XAI, Meta and others, including China's DeepSeek. With benchmarks saturated consistently, Anthropic assessing the cybersecurity capabilities of their Mythos model in collaboration with leading banks and technology titans, and ChatGPT Images 2.0 conjuring stunningly accurate visuals, I believe this step change parallels stone tools, fire, and the age of agriculture in magnitude and significance to our civilization. As observed, the two initial step changes meaningfully contributed to the expansion of cognition for individual humans. The latter step changes, occurring after the agricultural revolution, profoundly contributed to the expansion of cognition on a civilizational scale and arose more frequently. As humanity stands at the precipice of a new technological age, frenetically investing and architecting an entity more expeditious than ourselves, we seem unable to marshal an appropriate strategic response to the changes that lie ahead. I would consider much of the literature out there concerning our transition to superintelligence too anthropocentric and focused on the next 3 to 4 years. Some examples include OpenAI's paper on industrial policy and the intelligence age, JP Morgan's CEO Jamie Dimon's 3.5-day workweek, Elon Musk's comments on universal high income, and much of the rhetoric out there about how AI will augment the best employees, making them more efficient rather than replacing them. This does provide some reassurance for the near future. However, it feels like a hygiene piece that an AI company set to displace you would release before displacing you. Although I believe no one is currently qualified to develop a framework to tackle cognitive hyperabundance except superintelligence itself, I find it comforting that there is an attempt. I myself are definitely not qualified. Nonetheless, this video and the historical build-up to the present day is my contribution to this discussion. A computer can never be held accountable, therefore a computer must never make a management decision, is a quote from a 1979 IBM training manual that we can adapt to illustrate the current state of AI. If AGI makes a mistake, it cannot be liable. If superintelligence makes a mistake, it is liable. Therefore, superintelligence should never make mistakes. This sums up my contrarian take as I attempt to envisage what infinite capability looks like in the following. Picture an apple stationary on a table. A human takes hold of the apple, lifts it off the table, and places it back on the table. The majority of able-bodied humans, sane in mind, can conduct this activity with relative ease. If you were to ask the majority of humans to separate twins conjoined at the brain, manually land a spacecraft from orbit, or accurately predict the precise movement of equities over a single quarter, there would be an enormously high degree of failure. Superintelligence may conduct these activities in simultaneous instances, attributing a similar amount of effort to that which we use to lift an apple. Given electronic circuits are estimated to operate 1 million times faster than biochemical circuits found within the human brain, the speed advantage, parallel processing, and recursive self-improvement of artificial superintelligence signifies the futility of our frameworks and anything we can do to manage it, akin to predicting the invention of the traffic light before the invention of the wheel. Society may not collapse, but it may evolve. Our sense of self may be questioned, but one thing remains constant. The so-called tool we are about to deploy will reshape us, just as every tool has done before it.